What you are about to hear will blow your mind and give you six-pack abs without even exercising.
Pull up a bar stool and relax.
Hey, who wants to have some fun?
You've made it to Happy Hour with John Gaskins.
Oh, no. Not again.
Get ready for entertaining local and regional sports talk that will change your life. Or not.
And by the way, when you're telling these little stories, here's a good idea. Have a point. It makes it so much more interesting for the listener.
Here's your host, John Gaskins.
Here's Johnny. Hello! Ah!
I'm back, baby! I'm back!
Boyer. Engelhardt swings and hammers one deep to left field. Blake is going back. Warning track, ball lane, gone! Chase Engelhardt! It's a walk-off homer out to left. 378 feet. 4-3, Birds win. What a moment for the rookie.
A happy hour in the birdcage yesterday, indeed. The rookie with the walk-off to prevent the sweep from the best team in the league, the mighty Milwaukee Milkmen, and the Birds, 3/4 of the way through the season, secure for the playoffs. It would take an epic collapse to not reach them for a fourth straight year. They go 3-3 on the homestand, and they take on the second and third place teams. Chance to gain ground on the road this week. 6 more back at home in Sioux Falls starting next Tuesday. And welcome to Happy Hour. Happy Hour on a Monday. Big week. It is 2 weeks from game week for our high school football teams. For the Jacks, the Yotes, Augie, and USF. Zach Borg, now a full-time member of our staff at Sioux Falls Live and Midwest Sports. He started things on the camp trail today for the Preps. Brandon Valley, the defending 11 AAA champs. He'll tell us what he found there and also who he thinks could be the team to beat in South Dakota's largest class. Earlier in the show will be Samuel Akim, FCS analyst, Montana-based. We're going to chomp into the Grizz and the Bobcats and where the Jackrabbits and Yotes fit in the national championship picture. The Stats Top 10 preseason poll, Top 25 poll came out last week. And Sam's thoughts on where things all unfolded there. And, we are coming off a weekend that featured the Hall of Fame induction, only the second one from a South Dakotan, depending on what you define as South Dakotan. Adam Vinatieri, just the second native South Dakotan to ever go into Canton. The other one was Norm Van Brocklin, Eagle Butte, the first coach of the Minnesota Vikings. And Jim Langer did play for South Dakota State, so maybe that would make Vinatieri the third and in South Dakota history. Either way, he's only the best player at his position in the history of the league. But you would have never known Adam Vinatieri played at South Dakota State by his speech. 20 minutes of it. And he didn't mention Rapid City nor SDSU. That didn't stop it from being what turns out an epic speech because it's one of the funniest, or it's at least one of the most prolific attempts at humor in any sports Hall of Fame speech. I mean, this man went for the gusto. It was a swashbuckling speech full of bravado, also some poignant humility, and we're going to hear some of that as well. He thanked his parents, his coaches throughout the years, except for Mike Daly at SDSU, and his kids, his wife. He was making people cry. He was getting emotional, but it was a lot. That speech was a lot of things. It was a bit arrogant. I'd rattle off in Adam Vinatieri's accomplishments in football, but he just decided to do it himself in his speech.
All-time leading scorer, 4-time Super Bowl champ, most career field goals, NFL 100 all-time team. The list goes on, but Jim Porter told me I only had 10 minutes.
Okay. Thanks for the reminder. That was not his best joke. But no worries. He had plenty coming down the pike. Two of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Adam Vinatieri was their kicker. He made fun of Peyton Manning's forehead by thanking Peyton Manning's forehead to be the prompter, the space for the prompter. Get it? Because he has a big forehead. He made fun of Tom Brady because he mentioned that he played for the best quarterback in Patriots history, Drew Bledsoe. And then he took a swing at Tom Brady, saying he just was glad Brady wasn't at the speech so he wouldn't come up on stage and slap him like he slapped Logan Paul. So we're topical. And then now we're sophomoric. He made fun of Pat McAfee. Well, kind of. He just said it was great to see Pat McAfee, who was his punter in Indianapolis when Vinatieri was with the Colts. And he said Pat McAfee was a man who enjoyed holding his balls even more than his wife. Wow. And yet, the biggest zinger was this about Bill Bellichick.
Unfortunately, Bill couldn't make it here today. There's a lot going on at UNC right now. He may be on a recruiting trip right now looking for the next Lawrence Taylor. I thought it was because training camp had already started. But in truth, it's because he's judging his girlfriend's cheerleading competition.
All right. So, well done. We're thinking maybe some of the roast writers for the Tom Brady roast or the Kevin Hart roast were hired by Adam Vinatieri here. Funny is a matter of subjective, but he took some swings. And back to that remark where he rattled off the fact that he's the all-time leading scorer and on the NFL All-100 team and all that. This was an example of kind of the speech. There's all these jokes and there's a little arrogance here, but then he gets a little sentimental. This is right after he rattled off his accomplishments.
At the end of the day, none of these accomplishments define who I am. What matters most is that I was the best husband I could be, the best father, the best teammate, the best friend. I don't want to just be remembered for kicking footballs through uprights. I want to be remembered as that kid from South Dakota who never gave up on his dreams.
Hey, there's a South Dakota reference. Okay. It was the only time he mentioned the words South Dakota in the speech. Nothing about South Dakota State, which is very interesting because obviously he had a prolific career at South Dakota State. Adam Vinatieri left as the school's all-time leading scorer once he left Brookings. Now, he was there, as most of you probably know, from 1991 to 1994. And here's a trivia question that I will ask video producer Cordell. Guess where Adam Vinatieri out of D2 was drafted in the NFL? Which round? 6th. Nope, he wasn't drafted at all. He began his professional career actually overseas, the Amsterdam Admirals. That's a great trivia question. That was his first team before he eventually made it over to the Patriots in 1996 and actually did sign with them. And the rest, as they say, was history. If you know your Adam Vinatieri history at South Dakota State, you knew that at one point, the greatest kicker in the history of the sport was benched. He was benched by then head coach Mike Daly, who was on our show about a month ago and tells us that story.
A little up and down.
Yeah.
He was a better punter than kicker.
That's what I've heard.
Statistically, and just, I mean, he just pounded it. You could just hear it. And he was more inconsistent on the kicking game, on the kick stuff, and to the point, and this that I benched him at one time. He'd missed 3 or 4 extra points and field goals in a row, and I benched him and had an audition of the team and see who had kicked before, and 4 or 5 had, and they came and ended up going with a defensive lineman, I think it was, off of Jim Remy's his name, from Laverne.
Defensive lineman.
Yeah, and he square toe.
Yeah.
And he came in, of course, missed the first 3, and then we put Vinny back in. And
well, how upset was he? Was he upset?
Oh, yeah.
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 Okay.
Probably still is.
Wow. Was there any part? But you couldn't. You felt like you had no choice. He was struggling enough. You had to.
Just give someone else a chance. Give him a breather. He still punted.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, any competitor like he is doesn't like to not do his deal.
Mike Daly benched Adam Vinatieri for a defensive lineman with the square toes. That would have been a great part. I mean, Vinatieri was, as all these guys were, told 10 minutes. You got 10 minutes. He went 20, and he didn't tell that story. He did give the message, as a lot of these speech givers do, about character and perseverance and overcoming your fears and your doubts and believing in yourself. He had all that. It would have been perfect for being benched for a defensive lineman at a Division II college as a turning point in his career, to be a part of an already over-windy speech. But Vinatieri didn't do it. He didn't mention the Jackrabbits once. So if you were a South Dakotan and especially an SDSU fan tuning into that speech to hear about the Mighty Jacks, you were a little disappointed. John Stiegelmeier, then the defensive coordinator during Vinatieri's time, did go to Canton and did post some pictures of Vinatieri memorabilia there, but no pictures of himself with Adam Vinatieri. And I'm not sure if Mike Daly made the trip, but Adam didn't bring it up at all. Most of these guys in their speeches talk at least somewhat about their college careers. We don't have access to Adam Vinatieri to ask him why he didn't mention SDSU or Rapid City Central High School. Talked about his dad, talked about his brothers and sisters, including his sister Christine, who's the mayor of Sioux Falls. He did not mention Rapid City Central. Don't get it. I've tried to reach out to Christine Erickson, the new mayor, in the past year to see if we can get Adam Vinatieri on the show through her, because she's a nice lady, and I've gotten to know her through the years covering news in this town. And she said the same thing she has said to others who have asked her to try to get the Vinatieri. Good luck. I can barely get to him. Christine and Vinatieri's other siblings were in Canton and were put on the TV screens on ESPN during his speech. So there's a slight mysterious element to why Adam Vinatieri doesn't mention South Dakota and doesn't do interviews with South Dakotans. Matt Zimmer did a story on Adam Vinatieri and getting benched by Mike Daly in an Argus Leader article in 2018, and he's going to join the show tomorrow, and he'll give us more context. But there's something about these Rapid City icons. Becky Hammond declines interviews with South Dakota media constantly. It's a little bizarre, and it is a little unfortunate in Vinatieri's case, because you'd think that was one of the turning points of his career, getting benched by Mike Daly. There were no Vikings inducted into this year's Hall of Fame class. Well, I take that back. Kind of. Roger Craig ended his career in Minnesota. He got inducted as a 49er, of course, because he won 3 Super Bowls with them. Running back, pass-catching running back. And 1 year with the Raiders, 2 years with the Vikings. He had a 10.5-minute pre-taped speech. In it, he mentioned how he has now been diagnosed with dementia. So he taped the speech, but it was short. It was sweet. It was all class, no jokes or tomfoolery like Adam Vinatieri's. And Roger Craig did mention the Minnesota Vikings rather briefly, lumping them in with the Raiders on the back end of his career.
I was fortunate to spend time with the Raiders and Vikings later in my career. They were different experiences, different culture. I learned something everywhere I went. But those years also showed me just how special what we built in San Francisco really was.
Wow. Wow. Thanks, Vikings. Thanks, 1991 and 92 in Minnesota. Thank you for making me realize how awesome the 80s in San Francisco were. For the record, if you don't remember, so Roger Craig played 2 years under Denny Green and only made 4 starts in 29 games. He averaged 5 rushes for 19 yards a game and under 4 yards a carry. as a running back in his early 30s. And if you get to your early 30s as a running back in the NFL, that is saying something with the wear and tear. But let's just say it was not memorable, even for a couple of playoff teams with Denny Green. With Roger Craig there. But it brings up an interesting point. Roger Craig took a long time to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. There were many felt he should have gone in a lot sooner, but there were a lot of things that were argued against him, including the fact that he was never a rushing champion in the NFL, and his numbers don't stack up to some of the other Pro Football Hall of Famers, including ones that came after him, and yet he finally made it. And it's really hard to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. One of Roger Craig's champions was Chuck Foreman. Chuck Foreman, as well, is a player certainly Chuck Foreman feels should be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And the knock against Chuck is the same knock of Roger Craig. The stats, the yardage totals just aren't high enough, or maybe there wasn't a long enough stretch of elite running back play. That's according to AI, which conjures up all kinds of articles and facts. The window of time as an elite running back was not long enough for either. But so many stumped for Craig, he got in. Well, now Chuck Foreman should get in because Chuck Foreman paved the way for Roger Craig, because the Roger Craig advocates kept saying the guy has a bunch of receiving yards as well. He might be the greatest pass-catching running back that we've ever seen. He was multidimensional. West Coast offense, Bill Walsh, they threw a lot. And finally, people listened. And Roger Craig, who for his career was able to rack up, almost 5,000 receiving yards in 11 years, he gets in and is recognized for that. Chuck Foreman was Roger Craig before Chuck Foreman. Chuck Foreman was Roger Craig before Roger Craig. Their stats are eerily similar. In 11 seasons, Roger Craig averaged 4 yards a carry, 50 yards a game. Chuck Foreman, 3.8 yards per carry, 55 yards per game, more. Chuck Foreman led the NFL, the entire league, in receiving yards, more than any receiver in 1975, 73 catches. That was during a time when they didn't throw the ball as much. Roger Craig, famously the first player and one of only 3 in NFL history to have 1,000 yards rushing and receiving in the same year. That was 1985, and he cut 92 passes that year. So is that why Roger Craig gets in the Hall of Fame, but not Chuck Foreman? It must be that. Partly because Chuck Foreman never had a 1,000-yard receiving season. He had 1,070 yards and nearly 700 receiving yards in 1975. Would that put Chuck Foreman in the Hall of Fame? Because both had one Offensive Player of the Year award. Chuck Foreman was All-Pro 7 times. Roger Craig, just 2. Foreman, 2 times a first-team All-Pro. Craig, just once. Total Pro Bowls. Chuck Foreman, 5. Roger Craig, 4. Total Super Bowls. They both had 3. But Roger Craig went 3 for 3 with the Niners. And Super Bowl champions and people who have the distinction of doing something first in NFL history, like 1,000 yards rushing and passing in the same season, that might be the difference. Maybe at 8 years, Chuck Foreman didn't play long enough, but in 3 fewer years, he racked up similar numbers to Roger Craig, and that's any historian will tell you, that's a very, very accurate comp. If Roger Craig belongs in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, so does Chuck Foreman. There's no doubt about it. He was a quarterfinalist this year. But as the years go by, more running backs from after Chuck Foreman's time and even after Roger Craig's time, those guys tend to get in if they have better numbers, and that's unfortunate.